Hello, everybody listening or watching Cross-Border Talks. Today we are going to discuss what happened in Finland last week, a truly historic event, a truly historic mobilization of working people participating in mass walkouts. It's not exactly a strike, but I think we can explain it in more detail in a moment. But anyway, we are talking about a historical mobilization of the working class against the proposed changes, against the proposed policies of the right-wing government of Finland. We are going to discuss these matters with Veronika Susova-Salminen, a Czech Finnish journalist based in Finland, who watched these events live in the country where she is based. So, hello, Veronika.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, and at this point, I will just remind you that Cross-Border Talks has a YouTube channel, is also present on SoundCloud, Spotify. We also are present in all the main social media. So if you don't want to miss any episode, and you certainly don't want, just subscribe there and stay with us all along. Veronika, so there were 300,000 people not working last week in Finland on 2 days of last week. Some of the media speak about the largest mass mobilization, if not in history, then perhaps at least in the history of last few decades in Finland. Could you explain the reasons behind these mass walkouts, work stoppages, and what moves of the right-wing government made Finnish working people so angry?
Yes, it was a huge strike of 2 days. Basically, in some cases, it was 2 days, like Finnair, for example, was on strike 2 days. In some cases, only 1 day. It was the Thursday. And it was several confederations, the 3 biggest confederations of trade unions of Finland, who went to this strike as a warning so far to the government. The main reason, I think, is, first of all, we have to realize what many observers say is Finland has the most rightist government, most probably since the beginning of independence, since the 1917. This is one of the most, or even the most rightist government we are having, which is created by coalition of 2 big parties, which is the Nation Coalition Party and Finns, and 2 small parties, which is the traditional coalition partner, which is the Swedish, the party which is representing the Swedish-speaking Finns, and then Christian Democrats. And this government came with the so-called reform, which we can then speak more about the context of the reform, particularly the economic reform, which is basically introducing huge changes into the labor conditions in Finland. And now you and me, we are coming originally from the Central Eastern Europe countries. So for us, what we see here in Finland is déjà vu. It's basically very same things which are already working in our cases many years, which are now introduced in Finland with the same argumentation. Because the key argumentation of government is that it is necessary to lower the debt of the government towards the gross domestic product. They are speaking about that it is a dangerous situation for Finland. I would say that we have this debt is about less than 75% of gross domestic product. So it's not any totally uncontrollable amount of debt is needed to say here, with the same argumentation. So few things which they are proposing. I will mention only a few of them. I mean, you can find more on the pages of Finnish trade unions. You can find them also in English, in Russian, in Ukrainian, by the way. So you can read really everything in language you know. You don't need to know Finnish or Swedish for it. So the proposal in labor laws, and here, for example, me as Czech, this is déjà vu for me. The proposal is that there will be abolished the first day of sickness payment. In the Czech case, we had it 3 days. So they don't start with the most radical way, but they start with this. So this is, of course, we know what this is doing. This is actually pushing people to go to work sick. We know this is the result. So this is one of the way which they are proposing. Then there are huge changes within the social welfare. Specifically, they want to cut a lot in the unemployment grants, which they want to limit them. They want to give you basically the full amount of money only 2 months. And after 2 months already, they are proposing to limit it for 20%. When your unemployment continues more than 8 months, they will still cut next 5%. So there is the progressive cutting of these supports. By the way, they also are seeing that because here is the unemployment support, the amount of money is based on your income, before you was fired or lost the job. And now this money are counted if you had at least 6 months contract before, and then you was fired or lost the job. Now they want to prolong it to 12 months. So these people who are most vulnerable, who started the jobs and they lost the jobs because usually firms cut those who are the shortest time, we know it, they will be in this situation. And if they will be shorter than 12 months, they will not have a right to this money, and they will get only the basic support, which is much more less. The next thing they are offering or saying it's needed to do is to cut from the unemployment support or supplement related to children. So if you are unemployed and you have children, under the current system, you are allowed to get supplement, which is usually between 150 to less than 300 euro per month for child. They propose to abolish it totally. So unemployed people who became unemployed, I have children, they will not get the support for these children as extra, and they will get only the money 20% cut if there will be more than 2 months unemployed and so on. So this is in a nutshell, there is many other things which they are proposing in the labor law. But there are also other things which they are proposing within this reform package. And one of them, I think this is very serious, and that's why the trade unions are mobilizing so much. The government wants basically to intervene into the possibility to strike in Finland. And this is something what has, of course, definitely continuous policy of these rightist politicians and rightist parties who are representing more business interest than the interest of the working people. So one of the things is that basically they want to make illegal political strikes in Finland. A political strike, as you know, that is the strike which is aimed to challenge the policy of government and to influence the policy of government. So these strikes would not be legal in Finland. By the way, this is the thing which is, for example, illegal in United Kingdom. And we know how was the development of trade unions and labor in the United Kingdom. So here you go. Next thing which they want to make illegal are solidarity strikes. And solidarity strikes are strikes between the different trade unions. They are supporting each other during the bargaining process. So this will be, according to government, or should be according to government, made illegal. So this is just next example what this government is going to do, claiming that it is needed because of the cuts, because of their economic situation, which we can talk about in a while. But as you can see, within it is coming the attack to the organized labor. This is nothing other than the attack on the organized labor in Finland. So we can understand why trade unions are so angry about it and why so huge mobilization.
Well, for our Eastern European, Central European viewers, the move to abolish solidarity strikes or political strikes is really nothing new. Again, the Central European analogies come to my mind, as here in Poland, for instance, it is impossible to strike in solidarity with other workers or even to stand up against anything else than particular working conditions or payment conditions in your workplace. So indeed, the government is going to deliver a horrendous blow on the Finnish organized workers movement and on the workers' rights. So the question is why? What are the deeper grounds? Are we seeing another quite standard attempt of the business to maximize profits and again an example of neoliberal thinking? Or is this really something very bad going on in the Finnish economy that makes the right wing think that extreme moves must be necessary?
Well, I think it is still continuation of the same policies, which we have seen in many other countries. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, there was a lot of talk that there is the end of neoliberalism, end of neoliberal globalization. But in many countries in Europe, in the European Union, we see that this is not the true. And Finland or my country, Czech Republic, are the best examples, I think, because both governments are doing policies which are based on the Washington consensus in the time when the world is changing. But okay, if you look on the situation of Finnish economy and what you can read in normal mainstream Finnish media, you hear that the Finnish economy, two big problems are, and that's why it is now facing the slight recession. The two biggest problems are, firstly, high interest rates, which is frankly said something what government of Finland cannot influence, because Finland is in Eurozone and it cannot influence these things. So government cannot influence it, and of course the normal workers cannot also influence it, only they have to pay for it. Let's put it like this. And the second issue which is mentioned usually as a reason is typical neoliberal mantra, which is low productivity. But within this low productivity, the reasons for low productivity compared with, for example, Sweden or United States, there was such a comparison done, is that there is no enough technological edge in Finland anymore, that Finland has problem with educational levels. So this is something what government would tackle, but instead they are producing the cuts of the social welfare, cuts in the, by the way, this one of the things which will be definitely most impacted are young people. It was said already that young people will really suffer by these cuts which the government is introducing. So the question is how this goes together. I don't think it goes together very well. So there is this kind of reasons for the economy, but what I said already is valid. I think the government is actually not very much saying how this will help the economy. It's this repeating of mantra. They are rather all the time talking it's needed because of debt, and we have to tackle the debt. So this is the typical neoliberal way. And as you can see, the way how they deal with the strike, with the trade union and the organized labor is clearly showing that this is long-term process, long-term attack on the labor, on the organized labor. So it's again using of opportunity to do it under these new circumstances with the majority, because the government says we have majority, we have parliamentary majority, we have to do reforms, and you have right to be to don't agree, but that's it. We will do it however. By the way, not only trade unions are criticizing these reforms, also many economists, including the mainstream economists. Recently, for example, the Economic Policy Council was criticizing the way how this tackling of debt is done. They say you are cutting in wrong places, and the cuts will influence mostly the same people. The lowest and poorest people who need the support will suffer. Meanwhile, the society itself, will not. The burden will be not similar for everybody. So it's the return of the same policy. It's possible to see how much the political establishment in our countries has no any fantasies, and how much this neoliberal way of thinking and dealing with things is resilient and continues to exist even under the conditions which are changing in the world. Because if you listen recently, if you listen what was discussed in Davos Economic Forum, Davos refused many things which this government is doing because they didn't work. One of the things which we know doesn't work is that you cannot cut yourself to prosperity. You cannot, and this is what they are doing.
The economists you quoted seemed quite plausible, seemed very similar to what Jarkko Eloranta of the SAK Trade Union Confederation said. He summed up that weaker job security, unpaid sick leave, and restrictions on the right to strike will enable a massive increase of social equality in Finland. And it is absolutely stunning to see another country pushing towards moves that did not work anywhere. as we discussed already in cross-border talks regarding both Central and Eastern Europe and Latin America, for example. So my question would be, how were the protests received in the society? And if the government is going to go stubbornly the same way, then are the trade unions planning further actions?
I must say, I of course speak from personal experience, but I must say that the reaction in the Finnish society was pretty standard. You know, strikes are not anything special here, because Finland still has quite organized labor, and every year there are some strikes. I can say I live in town where is the important producer of paper. And just last year there was a strike which continued, I don't want to lie, but 2 or 3 months. 2 to 3 months the firm was closed because there was no bargaining, was not successful, and the workers didn't go to work, and they were continuing to be on strike 3 months. So this is pretty standard situation. Trade unions are still important part of Finnish society, even if we see that the membership is declining like everywhere, but still, if we compare it with, with our countries, Poland and Czech Republic, 12% trade union density, if I remember correctly. Here, some estimates say 75%, plus minus, but these estimates are not correct because they usually count also students and pensioners, because pensioners in Finland are also trade union members. So they say it's something over 50, 53, 56% in relative if we count out this part of population. So there was no any especially bad feeling about the strike, and it's needed to say that we have closed, for example, grocery shops were all closed one day, so you couldn't buy anything if you didn't buy before. Everything closed. Transport was, of course, in trouble, so you couldn't travel normally and so on. But as I said, this is pretty normal thing still, and there is kind of some people are indifferent, somebody doesn't like it, of course, but usually people feel that there is reason for it, and there is some kind of solidarity still. The reaction of government is classic arrogant. As I said, Prime Minister Petteri Orpo reacted about the strike that it was disappropriate and excessive. And again repeated that this is what we have to do. You know, this is also typical neoliberal argumentation. There is no other alternative. No, we have to, inevitable. There is no choice. We have to do it. So they are killing any discussion and search for alternatives since the beginning. They don't want to engage in some kind of alternative discussion, compromise, or something like this. So government make clear that they think they are right, they have to do it, and the trade unions' reaction is following. They will continue to strike. So now 3 days strike is planned between 14 and 16 February of this year, and it will be the industrial strike. So most biggest firms in Finland will be on strike. I found here the list. I just chose these firms which everybody knows. It's Nokia who goes on strike. It's Fiat Cars who goes on strike. It is, by the way, Škoda Transportation, which is owned by the Czech company Škoda, not the Škoda Auto, but the other Škoda, which does tramways and this kind of production, is also going to strike. Many other firms are going on strike, which are really big paper factories. Many of the paper factories are going to strike. So the trade unions are going to continue to push against the government, and let's see what government will deal with it. But from the Czech experience, you know, we had in November the strike, 1 million people went in strike, and government said, we don't care. So this can be the same, same reaction.
In the final question, I'd like to ask about the international context of the recent developments. You mentioned already the pandemic time when, contrary to what was being said in the first months of the virus, it was not that liberalism is falling. Instead, a lot of measures were introduced to support business and to just let the workers try to survive on their own. So Finland recently made headlines also in connections to the migration issues and general security questions in the Baltic region. How are those issues related to the labor dispute inside the country, if there is a connection?
Well, there are some voices and some experts which are actually saying that, that the fact that Finland quickly changed its whole concept of foreign policy and security policy, because Finland was still until last year neutral country. We can dispute this neutrality because the European Union membership in a way is changing the content of neutrality, but still it was not a member of any military bloc. Finland became to be member of NATO, and this is a huge challenge for the Finnish foreign policy and security policy, because it's the completely new situation, which they will have to deal with. And it was done so quickly that I don't think there were really proper inner discussion about what does it mean. And some of these voices are speaking that this is actually the part of continuum. They say the neutrality of Finland during the Cold War and so-called Finlandization was very much connected with the welfare state and with this Nordic social state model, which everybody is admiring, but I have to say it's going away. We have only a few left parts, and we can see that this is going away. So the social welfare state and neutrality were connected together in this specific system, and now you don't have neutrality. You have the era of reintroduction of the neoliberalism, and I myself call this, that we are, before there was Finlandization, now the consensus is that Finlandization was bad for Finland. Now we have Americanization of Finland. Americanization on the level of consumer practices and so on happened here many years ago, same like in our countries, here even before that, of course, because they were part of the capitalist West before we became even. But now there is the Americanization in the sense of, demolition of the social security, demolition of the remains of the social welfare, and the huge reorientation and dependence on the United States in terms of security. Because this is not only NATO, membership in NATO, but Finland recently undersigned a new contract, which Poland has also, Czech Republic has also, and many other countries have also, defense agreement with the United States, this bilateral agreement. And this will allow to station the military of United States Army on the Finnish territory, nearby of the Russian borders, by the way. And this will potentially, I don't say it will happen soon, but there is some signs that there could be that even nuclear weapons could be stationed or transported through Finland, because we are now in the middle of elections, by the way, presidential elections, and the candidate which most probably will become president, Alexander Stubb, from the same coalition party which is now running the government and introducing these policies which we were talking about. Alexander Stubb said already when he was asked that he can imagine that the law in Finland would be changed, because in Finland is the law against presence of any nuclear weaponry. It's forbidden by the law. But that he can imagine this situation under some conditions that the nuclear weapons could appear on the Finnish territory. So you have here Americanization of foreign policy, this new reorientation, and you have within it happening these processes which are reminding us really the harshest neoliberal measures, of which was Finland spared in last years still, but now they are coming there. So unfortunately, this is, I would say, in the nutshell, what happened with Finland. And Finland is Americanized, and it is also, unfortunately, becoming, another Baltic country in terms of the policy towards Russia, for example. All this uniqueness is gone.
Okay, I came up with one more question. It came to my mind right now. So if you allow me, I would ask it. Because just a couple of years ago, Finland actually had a left-wing government, a coalition government with Social Democrats, with the left-wing party, with Green Party, if I remember properly. And a lot of people were excited about Sanna Marin, a former shop worker, shop assistant, who rose to become the Prime Minister of Finland. And just in a few years, your country went the trajectory from having one of the most progressive governments in the world to a government which is, as you said, the most right-wing, the most hardcore right-wing that you had since independent Finland came into being. So my last question would be then, how was it possible?
This is a very interesting question, because, for example, I am also asking how it's possible that the Finns, who are social conservative party, which however was always pro-welfare state, even if it was welfare chauvinism, let's say. So it means for the citizens, not for the migrants, of course, because they are anti-immigrants, how they can be the part of this government and push such policies, which are against basically the basement of their program. And you can see here how much it is dangerous to believe these rightist populists. They are promising one thing and then they are doing the other thing, and it's not first time in the case of Finns, or true Finns, if you want. But why? Probably the government, first of all, I think for marine negative development, and this we saw in many countries, was the pandemic. The people were tired of pandemic, and these governments who were presiding over the pandemic policies became tired of them, and they voted against them. And it's needed to say that Marine's policies in pandemic and so on were not so strict like we had in other countries, where people were even more angry because of long restrictions and so on. So it is the reaction on the pandemic. It is the classical change of the government, probably, and the belief that many people were not probably happy with some of the progressive policies which Marine was representing. So because you have here really the conservative electorate, especially in the regions, which are usually not so, progressive, not so open-minded. And Finns and Keskusta, which is the central party, are mostly representing these people. Interesting is that Keskusta stays in the opposition because it lost a lot of votes, and they realized that if they go to government, they will probably end as a party, so they are in opposition. But Finns went to the government with this, as I said, with this program, which is social welfare for Finns, at least, because this is the party for Finns, but they are doing these cuts, and these cuts are falling not on the migrants on the first place, but to the Finnish citizens. Finns are who will be paying this, and poor Finns who are in these regions living, by the way, will pay the bills. So it is curious how much people are still falling in the same trap, voting trap, that this, they should remember, because, by the way, the party last time when National Coalition Party was in government, there were same things tried to be done, very same things, including that the policy against increase of salaries, against many things which are reminding what is going on now, and people still vote for these people, and they even vote for anti-establishment Finns who are supporting now this policy. So it is interesting situation, but this is what happened in Finland.
Well, hearing about Americanization in social plan or Americanization of social welfare system is always bad news. And it is particularly bad news in the context of the Nordic welfare state, which, as you said, which is actually disappearing before our eyes. As this Nordic welfare state was also an argument for our social democrats in our part of Europe to prove that there can be some form of care, of a state that cares about the citizens even within the capitalist system. As we all can see right now, it is not so sure. We will be definitely following what is going on in Finland. We will be following the events to come. And thank you, Veronika, for explaining to us what is going on in a wider context.
You're welcome.
And last but not least, I ask you all not to forget to subscribe to Cross Border Talks resources, not to miss any episode. Thank you very much, and see you again.